half Atiku is better than thousands of Buhari.
Buhari is doing the best in Nigeria.
And this is Dance of Democracy on Rootstv Nigeria. The elections have come and gone, but the conversations surrounding them continue. Right now, we are evaluating the electorate. Did they really go out to vote credible leaders? What are the lessons to be taken from the 2019 general elections, and a whole lot more? To have this conversation with me right here in the studio is someone who knows very much about elections, not just in Nigeria, but internationally as well. I'm talking about Dr. Rootstv Ibuzo. It is good to have you here.
It's my pleasure.
All right. Dr. Rootstv Ibuzo is the executive director for the African Center for Leadership Strategy and Development, and he was a one-time country director for Action Aid. Good to have you again once again.
It's my pleasure.
All right, so you have worked in collaboration with a lot of international organizations like DFID and all of that to educate the electorate about the importance of this particular elections. What is at stake? The elections have come and gone. By your evaluation and assessment, do you think the Nigerian voter got this message? How effective was this campaign that you carried out?
I think that the voters got the message to varying degrees. You will see that voters are now more discriminative.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
For instance, you will see states where the president had landslide and the governorship election is different.
Example, Kano.
Kano is a typical example. Even Sokoto, Kaduna, even though the APC won, the margin is shorter. Yeah. So you can see that the electorates are looking at candidates, they are looking at parties, and they are looking at what it represents. So we can say to some extent that the electorate got the message that elections are very important, and we see that during the presidential elections, the turnout was more, but because of pockets of violence that was experienced across the country, and the perception of some voters that their votes did not count, it affected the turnout in the gubernatorial and House of Assembly elections.
Why do you think that voters believe that their votes didn't count from the first elections as the presidential elections?
You know, there were some places where there were challenges to the election, where there was intimidation by the military. We are hearing now that some of them are fake military.
I see.
There are also places where politicians mobilized thugs from the two leading parties.
You're talking about APC and PDP?
APC and PDP. And for some people, it wasn't worth it, you know. But on the average, overall, I think that we are making progress as a country. Elections are counting more and more.
You believe so?
Yes.
Because the reason I asked...
You know why I say elections are counting
Please go
more
ahead.
and more?
In comparison to 2015, though.
Yeah, in comparison to previous elections. You need to look at the history of elections in Nigeria. The first election was held in 1923.
I see.
Following the Clifford Constitution of 1922. The second election was 1947, following the Richards Constitution of 1946. The third election was 1952, following the McPherson Constitution of 1951. And documents, researches, commissions, including the Ways Committee, you know, have all established that there was a progressive degeneration in the outcome of elections from 1923 to 2011. But in 2011, there was a reversal.
I see.
of improvement in the electoral process.
Why did that happen?
Because of the reforms that was initiated by Professor Atahiru Jega.
At that point, yes.
At that point. And then with the 2015 election, there was improvement because of introduction of card readers.
True.
And all of that. So in 2019, even between 2015 and 2019, we saw increasing attention to voters.
I see.
Which led to vote buying.
True.
You know, so even the value of the vote, value quote, in terms of those who are engaging in vote buying was increasing because increasingly politicians now noted that they could no longer, as they did in 2003 and 2007, sit down in a place and write the results of the elections. So vote is counting more and more. Even if you look at two states like Lagos and Delta, and you see, even though the gap between the winner and the second person was much,
almost 700,000.
Yeah, the events leading to those two elections meant that the leading political parties in those places had to do extra work. You know, in Delta, for instance, we do not see government campaigning, going from village to village, house to house. But that happened during this election.
Exactly, because the value of the vote, like you said, has increased. Let's talk about other African countries, example Senegal, that held elections during the same time as we did. In comparison to the Nigerian election, would you say that ours have become more transparent or less in comparison to other African countries? I mean, you have monitored those elections as well, or observed them as well.
Yeah, the one major difference between elections in Nigeria and other countries is that elections in Nigeria appear to be more violent.
Oh.
Yeah, than other countries. You can see the number of people that died. I think about 25 people died during the presidential elections. We are still counting the number of people that died during the gubernatorial elections. So other countries are relatively more peaceful. I've been involved in projects where African countries came to share their experiences of what happens during elections.
Do you think
it was shameful sharing the Nigerian situation? It's apparently worse than in many other countries.
Do you think the reason ours is more violent is because our politicians are being paid so much more and they invest so much more money in politics?
That is partly the reason, but it's partly the political economy of oil. Anywhere in the world where the government depend almost solely on oil for revenue, there is always criminal gangs, there is always criminals who engage in oil bunkering coming to power, there is always a lot of conflict, there is always corruption of monumental proportions, and there is always poverty in the midst of plenty.
Believable. So that our electoral process as it is, which is not very good, could be correlated to the fact that our resources from oil. That's why our politicians want to be in position of power to control those resources coming from oil.
If you notice it, Nigeria is one of the countries in the world where the number of people paying tax is lowest. We're about 180 million people. Not more than, I think, about 13 million people pay tax.
And yet we're
because government does not depend on tax money, and there is a relationship between taxation and accountability. So the free money, rent money from oil. Nigerian legislators are the highest paid in the world. You know, there's a lot of perquisites of office. And so the political economy of the country is such that public office becomes the most lucrative business in town.
Unbelievable.
And if you look at even the businessmen, they have to be linked to the political sector
to survive.
If you go to many states of the Federation, to the communities in Nigeria, the richest people do not manufacture any goods or provide any superior services. They are people who are connected to people in authority who just basically trade on contracts.
Unbelievable. To round this conversation up, what next? The elections have come and gone. Some people's hopes have been dashed because obviously the persons they voted for didn't emerge winner. Some had expected so much, it didn't happen. What next? What can that person who feels, okay, we didn't get what we wanted from this election, or the persons who got what they wanted from the elections, what do we do going forward before the next election cycle?
The next thing is governance. And both those who voted and those who did not vote for people authority have to hold elected officials accountable.
How?
There are many ways by which they can do that. There are at least 4 levels of accountability required from government. First is to advocate that institutions within government will put systems and mechanisms in place to ensure accountability. So the procurement process needs to be good enough, which is put by the executive. The legislature need to ensure that there is serious oversight of the budget and all activities of government. The media in Nigeria has been given the responsibility, the constitutional responsibility to hold government to account. The citizens can engage in various, citizens and citizens groups can engage in various ways through advocacy, through monitoring of projects, through, ensuring that what government said they will do, they do it by monitoring the manifesto and implementing. So all these are the things that, and government on its part need to know that they've made a lot of errors in the past. The first tenure was without a long-term development plan. They need to put in place a long-term development plan. The first tenure, they waited 6 months before making ministers. Appointed. They don't have to wait 1 week this time before naming ministers. The last tenure, they technically defeated Boko Haram, but Boko Haram is now facing soft targets. They need to realize that to deal with issues of soft targets requires winning hearts and minds, and put in place mechanisms to ensure that citizens participate in the security architecture. They need to look at the economy and link it with the long-term development plan. They need to look at various policies that have been in place and ensure that they are well implemented. Then the first national plan of the Open Government Partnership will be ending in May. They need to put in place a second national action plan that will take into consideration the lessons that have been learned in the last 4 years. So there is a lot
to be done
on the plate of the new government.
And then it is the people that will have to hold them to account and ensure that they do all of this.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Otivi, for taking out time to talk to us. And you have heard a lot of information right out here from Dr. Otivi. As the electorate, as the citizen of Nigeria, everything is now left up to your plate to ensure that accountability is observed with this new administration that you have voted in. You've been watching Dance of Democracy right here on Rootstv Nigeria. My name is Gloria Oje Emodi. Follow our social media platforms to give us your thoughts on this.
Half article is better than thousands of Buhari.
Buhari is doing the best in Nigeria.